How did a king, literally hiding out in a freezing, muddy swamp, forge one of the most powerful nations in human history? Right, just think about that for a second. It sounds completely impossible. Honestly, it sounds like a myth, but it's not. It is the very real, absolutely desperate genesis of a nation. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping way back into the 9th century. This is a period of incredibly high stakes, a truly epic historical struggle. We're going to break down the existential crisis that birthed a unified nation and look at exactly how England was pulled back from the absolute brink of total annihilation. Now, to really grasp this, we have to understand the threat. For years, the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had been dealing with Viking attacks, but those previous raids, they were essentially hit-and-run operations. They'd show up, plunder the local gold, and vanish back across the sea. But in the year 865, the game changed entirely. The Great Heathen Army landed on the eastern shores. And this wasn't just some raiding party. This was a massive, highly organized coalition. They didn't come just to steal a few treasures. No, they arrived to conquer, to farm, and to settle permanently. It was a sudden existential threat, and the divided Anglo-Saxons were, well, they were completely unprepared for it. Part 1. The Fall of the Four Kingdoms. At this time, the Anglo-Saxon world was fiercely divided. We're talking about competing kingdoms that were frequently at war with each other. And that division, it was their immediate downfall. One by one, these kingdoms just collapsed under the brutal weight of the invaders. First, Northumbria, conquered with terrifying speed. Its kings were executed, and its capital, York, was turned into a Viking stronghold. Next, East Anglia fell. Their king, Edmund, was brutally martyred by Norse commanders. Then came Mercia, the largest of the central kingdoms. They were crippled by internal betrayals and basically forced to surrender vast swaths of their territory. By 871, 3 of the 4 major kingdoms were entirely erased from the map. That left only one, Wessex. This was the absolute last stand against total Norse conquest. And who was leading it? A young, sickly, deeply religious king named Alfred. Part 2, Retreat to the Swamps. So this brings us to what is arguably the darkest hour of the entire Anglo-Saxon cause, a moment where it seemed like all hope was just extinguished. In early 878, the Viking leader Guthrum launched a devastating surprise winter attack on King Alfred's royal estate at Chippenham. Caught completely off guard, Alfred had to run for his absolute life. He vanished into the freezing, treacherous Somerset levels. He ended up hiding on this tiny, isolated island surrounded by thick, muddy swamps, a place called Æthelstan. To the rest of the world, the Saxon cause was dead and buried. The King of Wessex wasn't really a monarch anymore. He was reduced to a fugitive, living in the freezing mud, surrounded by just a tiny, shivering handful of loyal warriors. When you look at the timeline, the collapse was absolutely breakneck. From the initial invasion of the Great Heathen Army in 865 to the complete erasure of 3 entire kingdoms by 871, leading right into that desperate winter retreat in 878. But here is the massive paradox of this story. It was right there, in the freezing mud of the swamp, that Alfred orchestrated a miraculous reinvention. And that reinvention culminated just a few months later in May of 878 at the Battle of Æthelstan. See, while he was hiding in the marshes, Alfred flat out refused to despair. Instead, he completely reinvented how his society fought. He set up this incredible network of secret messengers, sending them out across the southern shires, literally under the very noses of the occupying Vikings. He ordered his loyal fighters to secretly gather at a hidden location known as Egbert's Stone. It was right there, completely out of sight of the Norse commanders, that Alfred rebuilt his shattered army from the ground up. And then, in May of 878, Alfred's newly forged army marched straight out of those swamps and smashed directly into Guthrum's Viking forces at the Battle of Æthelstan. Alfred's forces locked their shields together, forming a massive shield wall, and that wall held incredibly firm against the brutal Viking assault. The Norse forces were broken, they were forced to retreat, and ultimately they surrendered. But what happens next is what's truly remarkable. Instead of just executing the captured Viking leader, Alfred forces Guthrum to convert to Christianity. They sit down and sign a historic treaty that officially divides the island, establishes a permanent border, and crucially, saves Wessex from total destruction. Part 3, the Burgle System. Now, winning one battle, even a massive one, just wasn't enough. Alfred knew that to ensure the long-term survival of his people, he had to make some revolutionary changes. And the key to that survival comes down to one staggering number: 33. That number, 33, represents the first step of Alfred's brilliant three-pronged survival strategy. Step 1, he constructed a massive network of 33 fortified market towns, they called them burhs, all across his territory. This was a completely revolutionary defensive system. He engineered it so strategically that no Saxon citizen ever lived more than a single day's march away from a fortified stronghold. Step 2, he established a standing navy. The idea here was to proactively intercept Viking longships out on the water before they could even touch the beaches. And step 3, honestly, this might be the most profound part. He ordered the translation of Latin books into common English. Alfred realized he couldn't just defend their bodies, he had to defend their minds. He was ensuring his people could learn to read and write, actively preserving their entire culture.
To cement this newly unified identity, Alfred actually took on a brand new title, King of the Anglo-Saxons. This wasn't just vanity, it was a deeply strategic move. By doing this, he planted a crucial psychological seed in the minds of the people. He was telling them, we are no longer the separate warring kingdoms of Wessex or Mercia. We are one single people, united against a common threat.
Part 4. The final unification. As we know, the true birth of a nation is rarely achieved in a single lifetime, and the realization of Alfred's grand dream took decades. It required a true generational baton pass. King Alfred built that foundational defensive burgh system, but after he died, it was his brilliant daughter, Æthelstan, Lady of the Mercians, alongside his son Edward the Elder, who took up the mantle. Together, they launched a massive counteroffensive to systematically reclaim those occupied northern territories from the Vikings. And finally, it was Alfred's grandson, King Æthelstan, who literally marched his armies into York, unifying all the remaining regions under one crown. The culmination of this massive, multi-generational struggle finally arrived in the year 927 AD. At the historic Battle of Brunanburh, King Æthelstan achieved the ultimate triumph. He faced down and completely defeated a massive combined army of Vikings and Scots. And that victory? That was the final nail. It permanently sealed the unification. The separate, squabbling Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of the past were entirely gone. In their place, forged through fire, swamp, and total systemic reinvention, the Kingdom of England was officially born. So, I'll leave you with this to consider. From a freezing mud swamp, completely written off by the rest of the world, to a unified, enduring nation, how does the legacy of that last kingdom, that sheer, stubborn refusal to surrender, continue to shape the map of history today? Just take a second to think about the incredible force of will that required. If you found this deep dive into the birth of England insightful, please take a moment right now to like this explainer and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out and it ensures you never miss out on our upcoming historical deep dives. Thank you so much for watching.